We are terrible predators. We have no armor, we have no weapons. What we have is the ability to adapt to situations and to communicate those new adaptations. The problem is that the human is such a genius at adaptation that it adapts indiscriminately. Once it begins its process, whatever we were doing, it makes possible for us to repeat. Whatever we repeat, we become. When we talk about adaptation, we have to first think of it as indiscriminate, not bad nor good, just is. And with anything that we physically repeat, we're first going to be left with the lingering ability to do it again. So residual muscle tone. If you repeat any exercise, any movement, the tone will stay there until it subsides on its own, which takes a long amount of time, or until you have some type of strategy for releasing the tone, restoring resting length. We usually don't have the time or patience to do that. Unfortunately, that leads to the body being so efficient, it doesn't prefer to waste energy. So if we're not doing an activity and there's still tone, then the result of that is the body doesn't want to burn the energy of keeping that tone. So it starts to form tissue around that shortened or lengthened structure to keep it in place. It becomes dense. The myofascia develops its own thickness. And then the muscle turns off. So it doesn't have to waste that energy. That next step, moving from residual muscle tone to myofascial density, means you have more work to do because it's harder to release myofascial density. You have to pulp it like a grapefruit. You need manual therapy or self-massage. You can't just release it like you can muscle tension. Unfortunately, we get to that thickness where the muscle is relaxed, the density has built up, and if we don't go through the process of releasing that density, then the body will take its next step of, we're not going to endanger you. This is a protective mechanism. We're going to remove the communication between you and that movement that would threaten that thick tissue. A great thinker, Thomas Hanna, called it sensory motor amnesia. So we can't look at it as a negative or a positive, it just is. It's a part of adaptation and it's a protective mechanism. If anything, we should look at it as our body's way to avoid damage. If I forget how to move in a way that's restricted, then I can't threaten that area. So we limit the amount of risks that we take. We start to become risk averse, we start to become movement averse. We're very good in a very short adapted range. Whatever we repeat, we become. Unfortunately, there's a protective mechanism on the other side of that. Once we forget how to move in a way so that we don't injure ourselves, then if we're thrust into that range of motion, if we're forced into a range of motion that will injure us, there are last line of defense reflexes that kick in. I'm gonna inhale, I'm gonna brace as if I'm about to come into a collision, and I'm gonna hold everything tight. Now that's going to limit some of the damage that'll happen. In itself, it can be damaging. If I inhale and brace, and I have my arm thrust into a range that it can't go any farther, some tissue is going to tear, but my body believes that at least there won't be major ruptures. So it's a risk to benefit ratio. That fear reactivity is, again, the last line of defense is a protective mechanism. The problem is that it's very inefficient and it's not necessary. These are all inborn reflexes so our species could survive without armor or weapons. We can go through that process and reverse it. This is all reversible, except for the ruptures. Then you need surgical intervention, and then you have a new body. You have new structure, new adhesions that you have to take care of, new apparati if you have to have replacements. But even then, there are secondary issues that you can avoid. So when you go through the reverse process, how do you move from fear reactivity to sensory motor amnesia only? First, you're only moving in the range that you can, and you're working to avoid the inhale and brace and the generalized tension. And then you're slowly starting to shave off and reconnect awareness to that lost range so that the body can feel, yes, we are not being threatened there. Yes, I can reconnect to that muscle tension that's been switched off and has become very dense. And we started getting involved with manual therapy and myofascial self-massage, ranges of motion that are connected to alternate pieces of equipment so that we can start to pulp the grapefruit and remove that density. And finally, get back to the point where, and this is the most important part and the most critical part, after you go through that whole process, your body's gonna feel vulnerable because it's been depending upon that tightness. All of your behaviors are built upon that fear reactivity, the risk-averse sensory motor amnesia, and the dense, thick structures in you. When you remove those, now you need tension. Tension to do the things that you normally do, standing, walking, lifting, moving. All of your activities need to be repatterned with new muscle tension. So when you feel vulnerable, when you get back to the beginning, then it's time to retrain muscle tension and let go of that tension so that you don't restart the entire process again.